Today's reading will come from the NP&F Apocrypha Book Series Number 2, Volume 13, titled The Sinful Woman. This reading, or rather discourse, is intended primarily for spiritual edification. Thus, I fervently bid you all to hear, learn, and even enjoy. The Sinful Woman. Hear and be comforted, O beloved. How merciful is YHWH to the sinful woman. He forgave her offenses. Yea, he upheld her when she was afflicted. With clay he opened the eyes of the blind, so that the eyeballs beheld the light. To the palsied he granted healing, who arose and walked and carried his bed. And to us he has given the pearls, his holy body and blood. He brought his medicines secretly, and with them he heals openly. And he wandered around in the land of Judea like a physician, bearing his medicines. Simon invited him to the feast, to eat bread in his house. The sinful woman rejoiced when she heard that he sat and was feasting in Simon's house. Her thoughts gathered together like the sea, and like the billows her love surged. She beheld the sea of grace, how it had forced itself into one place, and she resolved to go and drown all her wickedness in its billows. She bound her heart, because it had offended, with chains and tears of suffering, and she began weeping with herself. What availeth me this fornication? What availeth this lewdness? I have defiled the innocent ones without shame. I have corrupted the orphan, and without fear I have robbed the merchants of merchandise, and my rapacity was not satisfied. I have been as a bow in war, and have slain the good and the bad. I have been as a storm on the sea, and have sunk the ships of many. Why did I not win me one man who might have corrected my lewdness? For one man is of Elohim, but many are of Satan. These things she said inwardly, and began she to do outwardly. She washed and put away from her eyes the dye that blinded them that saw it, and tears gushed forth from her eyes over the deadly eye paint. She drew off and cast from her hands the enticing bracelets of her youth. She put off and cast away from her body the tunic of fine linen of whoredom. She resolved to go and attire herself in the tunic, the garment of reconciliation. She drew off and cast from her feet the adorned sandals of lewdness, and directed the steps of her going in the path of the heavenly eagle. She took up her gold in her palm, and held it to the face of heaven, and began to cry secretly to him who hears openly, This, O YHWH, that I have gained from iniquity, with it will I purchase to myself redemption. This which was gathered from orphans, with it will I win the master of orphans. These things she said secretly, then began to do openly. She took up the gold in her palm, and carried the alabaster box in her hand. Then hastily went she forth in sadness to the perfumer. The perfumer saw her and wondered, and fell into questioning with her. And thus he began to say to the harlot in the first words he spoke, Was it not enough for you, harlot, that you have corrupted all our town? What means this fashion that you show today to your lovers, that you have put off your wantingness and have clothed yourself in modesty? Heretofore, when you came to me, your aspect was different from today. You were clothed in goodly raiment, and brought little gold, and asked for precious ointments to make your lewdness pleasant. Below, today your vesture is mean, and you have brought much gold. Your change I understand not. Wherefore is this fashion of yours? Either clothe you in raiment according to your ability, or buy ointment according to your clothing. For this ointment becomes not, or is suited to this attire. Can it be that a merchant has met you, and brings great wealth, and you have seen that he loves it not, the fashion of your lewdness? So you have put off your lewdness, and have clothed yourself in meekness, that by various fashions you may capture much wealth. But if he loves this fashion, Because he is a chaste man in truth, then woe unto him. Into what has he fallen? Into a gulf that has swallowed up his merchandise. But I give you advice, as a man that desires your welfare, that you send away your many lovers who have helped you not from your youth, and henceforth seek out one husband who may correct your lewdness. These things spoke the perfumer in wisdom to the harlot. The sinful woman answered and said to him, to the perfumer, after his discourse, Hinder me not, O man, and stop me not by your questioning. I have asked of you ointment, not freely, but I will pay you its value not grudgingly. Here, take you the gold, as much as you demand, and give me the precious ointment. Take you that which endures not, and give me that which endures. And I will go to him who endures, and will buy that which endures. And as to that you said, about a merchant, a man has met me today, who bears riches in abundance. He has robbed me, and I have robbed him. He has robbed me of my transgressions and sins, and I have robbed him of his wealth. And as to that you said of a husband, I have won me a husband in heaven, whose dominion stands forever, and his kingdom shall not be dissolved. She took up the ointment and went forth. In haste went she forth, as Satan saw her and was enraged, and was greatly grieved in his mind. At one time he rejoiced, and again at another he was grieved, that she carried the perfume oil. He rejoiced in his inward mind, but that she was clad in mean raiment. At this doing of hers he was afraid. He clave then to her and followed her, as a robber follows a merchant. He listened to the murmurs of her lips, to hear the voice of her words. He closely watched her eyeballs to mark whither the glance of her eyes was directed. And as he went, he moved by her feet to mark whither her goings were directed. Very full of craft is Satan, from our words to learn our aim. Therefore, our Master has taught us not to raise our voice when we pray, that the devil may not hear our words and draw near and become our adversary. So then, when Satan saw that he could not change her mind, he clothed himself in the fashion of a man, and drew himself a crowd of youths, like her lovers of former time. And then began he thus to address her. By your life, O woman, tell me, whither are your footsteps directed? What means this haste? For you haste more than other days. What means this your meekness? For your soul is meek like a handmaid's. Instead of garments of fine linen, lo, you are clothed in sordid weeds. Instead of bracelets of gold and silver, there are not even rings on your fingers. Instead of goodly sandals for your feet, not even worn shoes are on your feet. Disclose to me all your doings, for I understand not your change. Is it that someone of your lovers has died, and you go to bury him? We will go with you to the funeral, and with you will take part with you in sorrow. The sinful woman answered and said to him, even to Satan, after his speech, Well have you said that I go to enter the dead, one that has died to me. The sin of my thoughts has died, and I go to bury it. Satan answered and said to her, even to the sinful woman after her words, Go to, O woman, I tell you that I am the first of your lovers. I am not such as you, and I place my hands upon you. I will give you again more gold than before. The sinful woman answered and said to him, even to Satan, after his discourse, I am wearied of you, O man, and you are no more my lover. I have won me a husband in heaven, who is YHWH, that is over all, and his dominion stands forever, and his kingdom shall not be dissolved. For lo, in your presence I say it again, and I lie not. I was a handmaid to Satan from my childhood until this day. I was a bridge, and he trode upon me, and I destroyed thousands of men. The eye paint blinded my eyes, and I was blind among many whom I blinded. I became sightless, and knew not that there was one who gives light to the sightless. Lo, I go to get light for my eyes, and by that light to give light to many. I was fast bound, and knew not that there was one who overthrows idols. Lo, I go to have my idols destroyed, and so to destroy the follies of many. I was wounded, and knew not that there was one who binds up wounds, and lo, I go to have my wounds bound. These things the harlot spoke to Satan in her wisdom, and he groaned, and was grieved, and wept, and he cried aloud, and thus spoke, I am conquered by you, O woman, and what shall I do? I know not. As soon as Satan perceived that he could not change her mind, he began to weep for himself, and thus it was that he spoke. Henceforth is my boasting perished, and the pride of all my days. How shall I lay a snare for her who is ascending on high? How shall I shoot arrows at her, even at her whose wall is not shaken? Therefore I go into YHWH's presence. Lo, she is about to enter his presence, and I shall say unto him thus, This woman is an harlot. Perchance he may reject and not receive her. And I shall say to him thus, This woman who comes into your presence is a woman that is an harlot. She has led captive men by her whoredom. She is polluted from her youth. But you, O Master, are righteous. All men throng to see you. And if mankind see you, that you have speech with this harlot, they will all flee from your presence, and no man will salute you. These things Satan spoke within himself, nor was he moved. Then he changed the course of his thought, and thus it was that he spoke. How shall I enter into YHWH's presence? For to him the secret things are manifest. He knows me, who I am, that no good office is my purpose. If happily he rebuke me, I am undone, and all my wiles will be wasted. I will go to the house of Simon, for secret things are not manifest to him, and into his heart I will put it. Perchance on that hook he may be caught. And thus will I say unto him, By your life, O Simon, tell me, this man that sojourns in your house, is he a man that is righteous, or a friend of the doers of wickedness? I am a wealthy man, and a man that has possessions, and I wish like you to invite him, that he may come in and bless my possessions. Simon answered, and thus he said to the evil one after his words, From the day that I first saw him, I have seen no lewdness in him, but rather quietness and peace, humility and seamlessness. The sick he heals without reward. The disease he freely cures. He approaches and stands by the graves and calls, and the dead arise. Jairus called him to raise his daughter to life, trusting that he could raise her to life. And as he went with him in the way, he gave healing to the woman diseased, who laid hold of the hem of his garment, and stole healing from him. And her pain, which was hard and bitter, at once departed from her. He went forth to the desert, and saw the hungry, how they were faint with famine. He made them sit down on the grass, and fed them in his mercy. In the ship he slept as he willed, and the sea swelled against the disciples. He arose and rebuked the billows, and there was a great calm. The widow, the dissolute one who was following her son on the way to the grave, he consoled her. He gave him to her and gladdened her heart. To one man who was dumb and blind, by his voice he brought healing. The lepers he cleansed by his word. To the limbs of the palsied he restored strength. For the blind man, afflicted and weary, he opened his eyes, and he saw the light. And for 2 others who besought him, at once he opened their eyes. As for me, thus have I heard the fame of the man from afar. And I called him to bless my possessions, and to bless all my flocks and herds. Satan answered and said to him, to Simon after his words, Praise not a man at his beginning, until you learn his end. Hitherto this man is sober, and his soul takes not pleasure in wine. If he shall go forth from your house, and hold not converse with an harlot, then is he a righteous man, and no friend of them that do wickedness. Such things did Satan speak in his craft to Simon. Then he approached and stood afar off to see what should come to pass. The sinful woman, full of transgressions, stood clinging by the door. She clasped her arms in prayer. And thus she spoke, beseeching, Blessed Son, who hast descended to earth for the sake of man's redemption, close not your door in my face, for you have called me, and lo, I come. I know that you have not rejected me. Open for me the door of your mercy, that I may come in, O my Master, and find refuge in you from the evil one and his hosts. I was a sparrow, and the hawk pursued me, and I have fled and taken refuge in your nest. I was a heifer, and the yoke galled me, and I will turn back my wanderings to you. Lay upon me the shoulder of your yoke, that I may take it on me, and work with your oxen. Thus did the harlot speak at the door with much weeping. The master of the house looked and saw her, and the color of his visage was changed. And he began thus to address her, even the harlot, in the opening of his words. Depart hence, O harlot, for this man who abides in our house is a man that is righteous, and they that are of his companions are blameless. Is it not enough for you, harlot, that you have corrupted the whole town? You have corrupted the chaste without shame. You have robbed the orphans, and have not blushed, and have plundered the merchant's wares, and your countenance is not abashed. From him your heart and soul labor to take, but from him your nest takes no spoil. For this man is righteous indeed, and they of his company are blameless. The sinful woman answered and said to him, even to Simon when he had ceased, You surely are the guardian of the door, O you that know the things that are secret. I will purpose the matter in the feast, and you shall be free from blame. And if there be any that wills me to come in, he will bid me, and I will come in. So Simon ran and closed the door, and approaching and stood afar off. He tarried a long time, and proposed not the matter in the feast. But he who knows what is secret beckoned Simon, and said to him, Come hither, Simon, I bid you. Does any one stand at the door? Whosoever he be, open to him, that he may come in. Let him receive what he needs, and go. If he be hungry, and hunger for bread, lo, in your house is the table of life. And if he be thirsty, and thirst for water, lo, the blessed fountain is in your dwelling. And if he be sick, and ask for healing, lo, the great physician is in your house. Allow sinners to look upon me. For their sakes have I abased myself. I will not ascend to heaven, to the dwelling whence I came down, until I bear back the sheep that was wandered from its father's house, and lift it up on my shoulders, and bear it aloft to heaven. Simon answered, and thus he said to YHWH HaMashiach, when he had done speaking, My master, this woman that stands in the door is a harlot. She is lewd and not freeborn, polluted from her childhood. And you, my master, you are a righteous man, and all are eager to see you. And if men see you having speech with the harlot, all men will flee from beside you, and no man will salute you. YHWH answered, and thus he said to Simon when he was done speaking, Whosoever it be, open for him to come in, and you shall be free from blame. And though his offences be many, without rebuke, I bid you receive him. Simon approached and opened the door, and began thus to speak, Come, enter, fulfill what you will to him who is even as you. The sinful woman, full of transgressions, passed forward and stood by his feet, and clasped her arms in prayer, and with these words she spoke, My eyes have become watercourses that cease not from watering the fields, and today they wash the feet of him who follows after sinners. This hair, abundant in locks from my childhood till this day, let it not grieve you that it should wipe this holy body. The mouth that kissed the lewd, forbid it not to kiss the body that remits transgressions and sins. These things the harlot spoke to YHWH with much weeping, and Simon stood afar off to see what he would do to her. But he, who knows the things that are secret, beckoned Simon and said to him, Lo, I will tell you, O Simon, what your meditation is concerning the harlot. Within your mind you imagine, and within your soul you said, I have called this man righteous, but lo, the harlot kisses him. I have called him to bless my possessions, and lo, the harlot embraces him. O Simon, there were 2 debtors, whose creditor was one only. One owed him 500 pence, and the other owed 50. And when the creditor saw that neither of these 2 had anything, the creditor pardoned and forgave them both their debts. Which of them ought to render the greater thanks? He who was forgiven 500, or he who was forgiven 50? Simon answered, and thus he said to Yahusha when he had done speaking, He who was given 500 ought to render the greater thanks. Yahusha answered, and thus he said, You are he that owes 500, and this woman owes 50. Lo, I came into your house, O Simon, and water for my feet you brought not. This woman, of whom you said that she was an harlot, one from her childhood defiled, has washed my feet with her tears, and with her hair she has wiped them. Ought I to send her away, O Simon, without receiving forgiveness? Verily, verily, I say unto you, I will write of her in the gospel. Go, O woman, your sins are forgiven you, and all your transgression is covered, henceforth into the end of the world. May our Master account us worthy of hearing this word of his. Come, enter, you blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom made ready for all who shall do my will and observe all my commandments. To him be glory, on us be mercy at all times. Amen. Amen. Well, you daughters of Zion, I pray that all of you enjoyed this discourse just as much as I did. And with that said, I say Shalom.
Let there be love, 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 love. Pour down your love, 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 love. Let there be love. Let there be love, 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 love. Let there be love, 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 love. Pour down your love, love, love. Let there be favor. Let there be love, 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 love. Pour down your love, love. Let there be love, love, love. Let there be joy, 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 joy. Pour down your joy. Let there be peace, peace, peace of mind. Let there be love, 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 love. Pour down your love, love, love. Let there be peace of mind. Let there be peace of mind. Let there be love. Let there be favor everywhere we go. Open up the door.